Hey guys, and welcome to or back to the Pause in Pursuit podcast with your host, Summer Clark. So in today's episode, I'm going to be giving you 8 training drills that don't require venue hire, okay? Because if you are part of the agility community and you have a presence on Facebook, then you've probably seen what's been going on around a certain venue that we all use for training recently. Okay, and the conversation around that and people's views and everything like that, the realisticness of it, this realism, you get what I mean, of that situation, which isn't for a lot of people. And I just saw a lot of comments of people panicking, feeling upset that they can't hire this venue anymore, worrying about what they're going to do without it. They're closer. A lot of people say they're local to that and not other venues, so they're then having to drive, if they want to venue hire, drive further. Obviously, the cost of fuel these days isn't great. So a lot of people worrying, stressing, not happy with what's going on in that area of agility at the moment. So that kind of made me think, you know what, let's not panic. And let's remember that there is a lot we can do without having to hire a venue from home, from a park. You don't always, I know it's nice to have different surfaces, but, if you need different surfaces, for example, Astro Sand, you are going to have to go and find that, unfortunately. But as far as actual dog training, actual agility training, there is so much you can do without needing to go and find a venue. Yes, you need some sort of venue to do course running. Yes, I understand that. But again, I don't hire venues often, okay? Just to put it out there, I don't hire or use venues often. Obviously, yes, I know I have my own venue, yes. However, and that's another thing, there are venues, there are venues that can be hired that aren't, necessarily Astro or Sand or anything. Maybe they're just a grass venue. And yeah, I understand, yes, I have my own venue, so it's not as much of a problem. I'm not relying on other venues to run courses. However, I still do run courses at Lucy. So Lucy is my trainer and I go to group classes with Lucy. Obviously, you can also book one-to-ones. I know myself, I'm an agility trainer, instructor, and I offer group classes and one-to-ones. And in those sessions, obviously, there is use of my venue and we do course running. Okay, so if you want the course running, then obviously you can still access it by going to an agility instructor on a regular basis. You're getting full use of the equipment, full use of a full course, getting to run full courses, stuff like that. Okay, so it's still possible. However, aside from actually going and finding places to train people to train with, that isn't this specific venue that it's all happening around, there is so much you can do with your dog at home that will actually have a huge impact on your training. And I think sometimes people actually neglect these kinds of stuff because they are so busy, running full courses or, sometimes prioritizing the big, quote unquote, sexier stuff and then, neglecting this kind of boring stuff that you can and should be doing at home. So, let's use this event, this thing that's happening at the moment with this certain venue, to remind us, actually, let's do the little things, little skills that we can do at home. Let's focus on let's dial into the training drills that we don't need to hire a venue for and really get those nailed. And it'll make us all realise that actually it's not the be all and end all of our agility training and we don't need to panic so much because there are lots of different options. And yes, it's disappointing when a facility that you use often is no longer accessible to you. However, there are other options, okay? So let this episode be a reminder of those other options. There's lots and lots of them. Like I said, just using other facilities, going to a trainer, stuff like that has a venue. And then also, these drills I'm going to explain in this episode that you can literally just do at home for absolute free. And I know a lot of them, disclaimer, a lot of them include equipment. You will need some agility equipment to do them, obviously. But a lot of it, if you buy it, can fit at home in a garden. Sometimes even, for example, a jump, a couple of gates, a couple of weave gates, so you can train your entries and stuff, can fit inside the house. Okay, so for example, you know, you've got your wings and stuff like that and your jumps. Often you can find a space in your house where you can actually fit something like that. Often you can fit your mat and a manners minder in the house, stuff like that. Okay, so I'm pretty much explaining it before I've even dived in. So let's dive in to number 1. So training drill number 1, and this is the most obvious, is literally jump skills and their verbals. Okay, so not just training the jump skills and drilling the jump skills themselves, but training your dog to be able to go and perform those jump skills on verbals alone without your physical assistance. Because if you're in a small space at home, you may not be able to, you know, run up to it with your dog. You know, you may not be able to move around as much. So, you know, just sitting there with your dog in front of you or between your legs or on either side of you and giving those verbals, and your dog has to go to the jump in front of them and perform that skill. So, for example, wing wraps, okay? And also tightening up those wing wraps as well. So, you know, your reward placement. So rewarding really tight on the wing, practicing double wing wraps just to really get them as tight as possible. And then increasing the distance of the approach as much as you have the space to do so. Rear crosses, directionals, obviously a huge thing, you know, asking your dog to, you know, wrap a wing in a certain direction without your physical assistance is huge. Backside slices, so going to find the backside of a jump on a verbal alone, as well as backside wraps. So again, think about your reward placement for the difference between those. Threadle slices and threadle wraps, very similar to backside slice and backside wraps. The difference is the reward placement, because obviously you're going to be sat still because you're asking your dog to go find these things on a verbal. Disclaimer as well, obviously when you start these exercises, you probably are going to have to give your dog a bit more help with them to start with, especially if this isn't something that you've really done a lot of before. But the goal and the idea of the exercise is to gradually phase out your help physically and just have the verbal, okay? So regular short sessions will mean that, you know, your dog will become accustomed to doing things, you know, doing these exercises on the verbal alone without your physical assistance. Okay, you can also practice or train, because actually I've had a lot of people come to me, students, that don't actually have a look cue. The dog does not have a look cue, so they cannot look at the first jump on cue, which is quite a problem, especially on modern day courses where you've got a lot of send away starts, and you have to set your dog up, step back behind your dog, get them to look at the first jump and then send them to it. For that, we need this look cue, okay? And a lot of people don't seem to have that, so you can easily practice or teach from scratch a look cue for a jump at home. It literally, all you need is one jump and your reward. Okay, you can also practice sending away. So again, as much room as you can. For example, if your garden is a certain length, you can say, well, my goal from these sessions is to be able to send to this jump doing whatever verbal I cue without my physical assistance from a distance. So from the distance of my garden or living room. Obviously, you're going to start really close and then gradually over sessions increase that distance. So there you go. You can practice all your jump skills, and you can practice getting them solely on the verbal without your physical assistance. And then you can set yourself a goal of, you know, a distance goal of how far you want to be able to send your dog to the jump skills on their own. For example, the length of your garden or living room. Okay. So training drill number 2 is weave entries. Okay. So you can practice your closed and your open faced weave entries here. Okay. So again, all you need is either 1 or 2 weave gates for entry practice. So literally 2 weave poles or 4 weave poles. That's all you need. I mean, if you can fit a full set of weaves in, excellent, even better. But if you can't, you can just practice that entry, and that doesn't take a lot of space, does it? 2 or 4 weave poles. So what you can do is, again, you can, if you have the room, position a wing at entry points around the clock face. Okay. So you'd be starting at 12 o'clock, which is a straight entry, and then gradually increasing the angle to 5 and 7 o'clock, okay? Obviously not from 12 to 5 and 7, but, you know, going from 12 and going 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, and then obviously from 12 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And you want to be doing that gradually. If you don't have a wing or you don't have the room for a wing, you can just hold your dog in those positions. Okay, so if there isn't room for your dog to wrap the wing before the entry, just hold them by their collar or just sit them at those positions where they would be coming off a wing if you had it there, if that makes sense, and then cueing them to go find that entry. Okay, so what you can do is you can position the manners minder or toy, whatever your dog's reward is, in each gap of the weaves and gradually move it back along the set if you have a full set. Okay, so your dog's getting rewarded just for the entry to start with, and then for doing 3 poles, then 4 poles, then 5, as many as you can fit. Okay, and you don't have to fit the whole thing. Just doing the first 2 or 4 will, is great. Okay, that is practicing the entry. Okay, and another good thing about this is that it's less stress on your dog's body as well to not do the full set all the time. Just get practicing that entry and getting rewarded for that. Okay, less strain on your dog's body over time. You could probably do more little sessions of it without putting that strain on your dog's body, because it's not putting that strain on your dog's body, if that makes sense. Okay, so this style of training weave entries actually allows you to do more sessions and do them more frequently, which is always good for our dog's learning as well. Okay, so short, frequent sessions just on the entries, and you don't have to do the full set because, like I said, it's unnecessary. Okay, if you have the room for a full set, by all means, practice them. But just be aware, if you're repping these a lot, then it's a lot on the dog's body. But again, as well, you don't have to position your reward in the weaves. But for a lot of dogs, it works way better because they have something to drive to. But you can treat out of the weaves in your hand by teaching, if your dog doesn't already have one, by teaching okay, you come out of the weaves for your reward cue. Okay, so this doesn't want to be a cue your dog already has. It wants to be new and just literally isolated to the weaves, and it should mean to your dog, lead the weaves now and get your reward, so that they don't get used to popping out of weaves to get their reward. Okay, so if you don't say that cue, they carry on weaving until you do, and if you don't at all, they just carry on weaving, and then whatever, they get the reward, or it's the rest of the course. Okay, so you can teach that as well, which will allow you to practice your weave entries more. Again, making sure to do both closed and open faced equally. So if you do one session on closed, make sure the next is on open, etc. Okay, so you can do a lot of weave entry work without too much space, and especially without venue hire. Training drill number 3 on the other end of this is weave exits. So again, you can do your closed and open-faced weave exits. So in a similar sense, you can position the manners minder or toy at exit points around the clock face. Okay, so again, starting at 12 o'clock and gradually increasing the angle to 5 and 7 o'clock respectively for both closed and open faced. Again, working around the clock face gradually, not jumping straight from 12 to 5 or 7, as I said in the previous point. And again, you don't need the full set, so you can just send your dog into the last couple of weaves if you just have a few gates, and then practice those exits. Okay, so again, possible without a full set of weaves, but if you have a full set of weaves, then by all means use it. But even for exits, if you just have, I think, 4 gates, if you have 4 gates, then you can. No, actually, I would say ideally you want 6 weaves, so 3 gates to practice entries, so that your dog isn't entering incorrectly, if that makes sense, if you only had 4. I think minimum, have your 6 weave poles. Most people can fit 6 weave poles into their garden or house space. Okay, and you don't need the full set of 12 to practice the weave exits. Okay, again, if you do, great, but if you don't, you don't have to. Okay, so you can practice your weave exits as well. Lots and lots of weave work that you can do without hiring a venue. Point number 4 is obstacle discrimination. Okay, so surprisingly, you can do this in a very small space. So, for example, you can have a jump next to a tunnel entry. Okay, and you can use a small tunnel if you have one. You can use a 3-meter tunnel. And you can actually fit that into quite a small space and literally just have those 2 obstacles up. Make sure as well to be cueing both the face and back sides of that jump. Okay, so the hardest one is to have a jump next to a tunnel. Okay, very close, but with a gap just big enough for your dog to get through, and asking them for a backside. Okay, so if the jump's on the left of the tunnel as you look at it, having your dog on the right of you, and giving them their backside cue, and they have to go through that little gap between the jump and the tunnel and take the backside of the jump. Okay, you can also just cue the face side. Okay, so if you had your dog on the left in this scenario, you could just cue your give them your jump cue or your wing wrap cue. Okay, again, reward placement. If you want them to do the face, then you can throw the toy over the jump after they've taken the face so that they're just jumping in a straight line. Or to make it easier to start with, you can position the reward on the other side of that jump. But that makes it a lot easier. I think the real way to test is to not have a reward positioned for discrimination, because otherwise that's kind of luring in a sense. Start with that if they're struggling, but try and phase it out if you do. Okay, because we want them to be thinking completely by themselves. It's almost a shaping exercise. Okay, so yeah, you can do a lot of that. And obviously if you do some with the jump on the left, then do some with the jump on the right. Make sure that you do both sides, so your dog is on both sides of you. That prevents you from creating a bias for your dog. Your dog doesn't then prefer it when they're on the left or the right of you, if that makes sense. Okay, if you have weaves, again, all you need is, I'd say, 2 gates. You can have a jump or a tunnel next to a weave entry, okay, and then cue the weaves. Again, I would say for stuff like that, probably have the 6 weaves, just because your dog's going to be entering correctly in that sense. Okay, it's a bit different for practicing weave entries because the reward's just going to be there. Okay, they're not thinking, oh, I'm exiting wrong or anything, because the reward is in that gap. But if you're sat back, if the reward's in your hand and not at the end of those weaves when you're doing the discrimination, we don't want your dog to get used to entering with the last pole on the left shoulder, for example. So yeah, if you could fit your 6 weaves and either a jump next to it or your little 3-meter tunnel, that would be great. And then you can do jump, tunnel, discrim, you can do jump, weave, discrim, and you can do tunnel, weave, discrim. Okay, and literally just stand still and ask for it verbally, and your dog has to go find those things depending on what you're saying. Okay, so there is a lot of that you can do. And yeah, mix it up, ask for different things. Try not to ask for anything in a pattern. In fact, definitely don't ask for anything in a pattern, because your dog will realise what the pattern is, and probably succeed, and you think they're succeeding, but really they're just patterning it. Okay, so make sure to mix up what you ask for. Same goes for the jump skills when we spoke about the first training drill. Okay, so that's training drill number 4, obstacle discrimination. Point number 5 is your running contact foundations. Okay, so you can do your mat work on the ground, which includes sending away to the mat. So you can send your dog to the mat in an arc and reward them back next to you. Okay, so they physically have to go away, find it, that's that shaping exercise, and then come back for their reward. Okay, you can also do wrapping around a wing and then running straight over the mat and to either a manners minder or a toy, depending on what you're using. Okay, and again, you don't need massive distances for that, as long as the criteria is the same. And then you can change the angle of the reward after the mat in that scenario by, again, a bit like our weave exits, moving around the clock face. Okay, so changing the angle of the reward by moving it around the clock face, starting at 12 o'clock and gradually increasing the angle to 5 and 7 o'clock again. Okay, so they have to do the mat and then they have to swerve at an angle because the reward is now angled. Okay, so gradually increasing that angle from a straight to a curved angle in both directions, both to your dog's right and left. Also, changing your movement and positioning as a handler. So starting by walking next to your dog as they do the exercise, then jogging and then sprinting. And also practicing being behind the mat, next to the mat and in front of the mat as the dog does it. Okay, and then adding some arm swinging and an excited tone to your verbals as well, because that will make all the difference. When our dogs enter a heightened state of arousal, they are more likely to basically miss the mat because they're in that excited place. As we all know, as you all probably know, our dog success rates generally decrease when the arousal increases. Because they're not thinking as clearly. So it's good to practice that as well, really trying to purposefully rev your dog up, and then they have to learn how to still hit criteria despite that level of arousement. Okay, and then if you do have a down plank of a dog walk, you can prop that up safely onto either a ramp or a crate, etc. If you have one, you know what crates I mean, those really sturdy, secure, like milk crates, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you do have a down plank and you can secure it, then you can put the mat on the bottom of that and get your dog running just down the down plank and to their reward. That's a great foundation if you can, and again, doesn't take much space because it is only the down plank. Okay, so there is clearly a lot of stuff you can do around running contacts at home without having to hire a venue as well. Okay, drill number 6 is seesaw end position foundations. Okay, so you can practice the end of your seesaw because for every dog there is an end position behavior. There's criteria on that end position. Okay, so if your dog has a nose or a foot target, you can practice that on the floor. Okay, so putting the nose or the foot target on the floor, maybe throwing it a distance and asking your dog to go to it and nose target it and then get rewarded for that. So really building value. So use this to build extra value for the target if you have one at the end of the seesaw. Okay, so you can do it away from the seesaw so that when you do put it back on the seesaw, your dog now has a heightened sense of value for it and a stronger behavior. Okay, whether that's a nose or a foot target. And again, all you need is the target for this. You don't need much space at all. Okay, just moving the position of that target and, rewarding for double or triple or several touches of it in one go to really build value, stuff like that. Okay, and again, mix it up as much as you can. Then if your dog, every dog either has 2 on, 2 off or 4 on the end of a seesaw. So you can do whatever that behavior is for your dog to the target, either the nose or the foot target, on any suitable object. So, for example, around the house, you can use a step, a stair, or a plank, for example. Only has to be small. It's just practicing that behavior, okay? Having the back feet on, the front feet off, or all 4 feet on the end of that object, and then doing the target behavior, which is at the end. Okay, you can also change your movement and positioning as a handler in the same way as I discussed in the previous drill, which was the running contact foundation exercises. Okay, so building more arousal, creating a heightened sense of arousal so that it's harder for your dog to perform the criteria correctly because they're aroused, but they have to learn to work through that. Okay, drill number 7 is body awareness around the wall, tire, and long jump. Yes, I know you have to have this equipment to do this, but again, you can buy equipment without, you can buy yourself equipment for home, okay? You don't have to hire, I know it's expensive, but you don't have to hire a venue to practice equipment. Once you've got a piece of equipment, you've got that piece of equipment for your dog's lifetime. So it is cheaper than constant hires throughout your dog's lifetime just to buy that one piece of equipment they're struggling with. Okay, for example, I bought a wall. I know it's for my business and for my venue, my field, but I'd buy it anyway, even if I didn't have that, just for the garden. Okay, because all you need is that you don't even need a massive run up or, much space after it. Okay, to practice your dog's body awareness around that piece of equipment and keeping their feet up. Okay, so I would have bought a wall just for my normal size to small garden. Even if I didn't have my venue. So you can buy those things to practice, and then you've got that for your dog's lifetime, okay? And you can practice those pieces of equipment in isolation, okay? So, for example, you can ask your dog to sit fairly close to the obstacle and then reward them just after the obstacle for jumping it and thinking about picking up their feet, okay? So we want them powering off from that sit over the obstacle and then getting their reward, okay? And then gradually adding as much, again, adding distance to it. So if your garden's a certain length or your living room's a certain length, getting your dog to sit at one end of it, then doing the wall that is more close to the other end, and then getting the reward, okay? Or positioning that piece of equipment in the smack bang middle of your garden, and then asking your dog, to go from one end of your garden over the piece of equipment to the other end of your garden, which is where the reward is, okay? So building up that distance, but starting close so that your dog is really thinking about where their body is as they navigate, as they jump over that piece of equipment, okay? So you can, if your dog's maybe knocking walls, tires, or long jumps, or is just taking them a bit funny, or even if you just want to want to practice more of it because you don't see it a lot in competition. Often I think we think, we need to hire venues because they have all the equipment. They have, all these wall, tire and long jump and stuff like that maybe your trainer doesn't have or something like that. But you can buy those things, and I know it's an investment and I know it's money, but it's still going to be cheaper than lots and lots of venue hires, okay? Because you do have that one purchase and you have that piece of equipment to practice over your dog's entire agility career. Okay, so you can do those body awareness exercises. And then finally, training drill number 8. And this is away from agility equipment, but it is so important and contributes so heavily to your dog's agility performance. It is insane and it is often overlooked, and it really winds me up. It's frustrating. I think it's often just a lack of education, but that's what I'm here for. Strength and conditioning exercises. Please make sure you are doing these with your dog under, disclaimer, only under physio guidance, okay? Make sure either physio or, someone who is trained in canine conditioning or is a physio or has some sort of, knows what they're talking about in the world of canine conditioning and strength and exercises like that. Get their guidance and you can do them all at home, and it will really help your dog not only do better in agility and, perform better on course and complete equipment better and with more efficiency, which is going to get your times down in competition. But it is also going to increase and improve the longevity of your dog's overall agility career, okay? And isn't that all of our goals? To prolong our dog's agility careers for as long as physically possible. And that is what these exercises are going to do. Again, you can overdo it, so make sure you are under the guidance of a professional, either a physio or canine conditioning professional, so that you know how frequently to do it, what exercises suit your dog and, will benefit your individual dog and meet their needs, okay? Because you don't want to be overdoing it, and you don't want to be doing the wrong exercises, and you don't want to be doing exercises incorrectly or with the wrong form. So get that guidance, get that exercise plan, and really focus on doing that at home, okay? For example, things that your physio or canine conditioning professional might give you include paw lifts, wobble cushion exercises, a rear foot target, sit stand or down to stand, for example, on a plank, reversing for bodily awareness, proprioception, cavalettis, so again, that awareness of your dog's feet and more, okay? So they're just some examples, but again, only under the guidance of a professional, because like I said, I wouldn't know what I was doing, so that's why I go to a vet physio, and Arrow has his own personalised exercise plan. But yeah, you don't need to hire a venue for that, and it will really contribute to your dog's overall agility performance and longevity of their career. Okay, so there are 8 training drills and things you can do with your dog without having to hire a venue that will actually still really help your dog's agility performance and improve it, okay, which is what we want, isn't it? Okay, so I hope that was helpful. I hope that stopped some of you guys panicking too much about the current situation that's occurring. It's disappointing, I understand, for some people, but it isn't the end of the world, okay? And you can still get loads of efficient training done, loads of productive stuff done without having to hire a venue. Okay, so I really hope that was helpful, guys. What am I getting up to over the next week, you ask? I am at Synergy on Saturday for the IQ, for the GB IQ. But actually, no, first and foremost, it's my birthday on Friday. I turned 25 on quarter of a century, which is terrifying. So birthday celebrations on Friday. Then I've got Synergy IQ on Saturday, more birthday celebrations on Saturday night, potentially more on Sunday, but I also do have to do a course change on Sunday at my venue. But yeah, a nice fun weekend planned, so I'll probably see some of you at Synergy. Apart from that, work as usual, getting really starting to get things ready for EO now, the last little bits, a lot of boring bits as well, to be honest, but has to be done. And yeah, that is it. Without further ado, you know what I'm about to say. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do leave the podcast a 5-star rating and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Also make sure, that would mean the world to me, by the way. Thank you, love you. Also, make sure you're following the podcast on whatever podcast streaming platform you choose to use. Then you will not miss any future episodes. I have some cool guests in the back of my mind that I need to sort out, but they are coming. So make sure you're following so you don't miss those. I've got my psychology coach, Kate, coming on the podcast in a couple of weeks' time, talking all things mental, mindset around agility, competitive mindset, stuff like that, dealing with nerves, the psychology around competitive sport, stuff like that. So I can't wait for that conversation and to share it with you guys in a couple of weeks. So make sure you're following so you don't miss it. Also, please do keep sending me your podcast topic requests and recommendations, both solo episodes, so things you want me to talk about in episodes on my own, and also guests that you would like me to have on in the future, and also what you would like me to talk about with those guests. So if there are specialist subjects you would like certain guests to talk about, please do include that in your request as well. You can send me those requests via DM on social media at Pause in Pursuit or Summer Clark. Also give me a follow at those handles on pretty much every single social media platform you can think of. Instagram being the main one because that is where I advertise podcast episodes. I ask you guys to ask me questions for my monthly Q&A episodes, and also that is where I ask you guys to ask my guests questions as well. So you need to be following me on Instagram if you don't want to miss out on that. I know it should be a monthly Q&A episode today, but I completely forgot to ask the question at the weekend like I normally do because I was having a wonderful non-doggy weekend away. It was lush for a change, just what I needed, and I completely forgot about asking questions. So that will be next week. Keep an eye on my Instagram. If you've got a question that you would like me to answer, I'll be answering all your guys' questions this time next week on the episode. So again, look out for that on my Instagram story. You guys will get the opportunity to ask me whatever you please. And also, if you are in need of a training aid, such as a dog walk stride regulator, help with your tight turns, anything like that, please do follow my link to Safe Stride Solutions. It is in the description of this podcast episode. Treat yourself to a training aid. Honestly, I have so many of their training aids. They have helped not only me and Arrow on our own personal agility journey, but they also have helped so many of my students, and are still helping so many of my students reach their goals. They are so helpful. You know, why battle through a training issue when you can get an aid and it will really help you? You know, weave guides, anything like that. Just kickstart that process of fixing an issue or teaching something properly. So please do treat yourself via my link. Again, that will mean the world to me. And yeah, you won't regret it. You will really benefit from it, in fact. And lastly, I also offer in-person agility lessons. So I offer one-to-one lessons and group classes as well in Lincoln, postcode LN6. So if you're interested in training in person with me, again, just send me a DM over on social media and we can sort something, whether you want a one-to-one with just me, you and your dog. And I'm very flexible as far as those go. So please do just ask the question. Or if you're interested in a group class, again, message me and I can tell you the group classes that I currently have space available in. I'm hoping to start a few more soon as well. But there are a couple of spaces in a few classes that want to be filled. I have some daytime classes and some evening classes. So again, just message, just ask the question and we can sort something. But that is it for this week, guys. Happy July. Can't believe we're here already. And I hope you guys have a great week. I'll see some of you at Synergy, but if I don't, I will speak to you all again next Wednesday at 8 p.m. here on the podcast. Bye, guys.